start with, or what previous knowledge I should have, what are the tools that we use. Nothing at all. So this company used to build routers and APs for Wi-Fi, and this was a global team called Arista Networks, if people might have heard about it. And so when I joined, we were asked to work on data and XML. So when we think about the tools, now we have so many docs as code tools, and we are working with, we can work with actually Notepad or Google Doc as well. But when I joined that company, there we used to work with data and Oxygen XML, which is entirely difficult to use because you need a learning curve for that in itself. So that's when I realized that tech writing is difficult, because it's not just about writing, it's also about knowing the stuff, and it's also about you knowing the tools that you need to work upon. So that's how the journey began. That's how I started learning. And over those 4 years of the tech writing thing, I understood that tech writing is composed of three things, which is the structure, the language, because I don't think so tools matter. After leaving that company, I realized that the tools that we used later were entirely different than the tools that we used in that company. So tools are just something that we keep on learning along with the journey. So I realized that the most important part is the structure that you have, the language that you use, the language, the grammar part of it. And the third part is the understanding of the topic. So I think I have written as a freelancer also, like I've worked as a freelancer as well for a lot of companies for tech writing. I've written website content, I've written articles, I've written code blogs and various things like academic writing also. So while writing those articles, I realized that if you need to, because as a tech writer, I don't think so you can have knowledge about each and everything. That's the most difficult thing on this entire earth also, because you can't just learn about anything and everything. But uh, the only thing that matters is how well equipped you are with the learning phase. So you have to be a very quick learner and a very good researcher. So these are the two things that I have realized over time, that I think half of the time research takes a lot of your energy and of your bandwidth. I think writing is the smallest part that you need to do. The biggest part is the research part, and the second biggest part is the editing part. The writing part is the smallest part, which I have realized. So, getting the gist of the topics that you have written that you want to write about is one of the three things that you need to take care about. And the first, as I said, is structure. Now, talking about structure, I say that even in general writing, your process determines how well you are writing. So, if I talk about an article where we are talking about how AI has this was an article where we were talking about how AI was used in football game and to determine the scores and everything, which we call Moneyball. So now the topic is really interesting, but how do you actually take the user from point A to point B and to point C and then to the destination where the user understands that, okay, this is how it was used there, and now I can also implement it into my own journey. So I think this is where tech writing structure comes into picture. And for structure, I use this resource called diastasis. I always talk about this in all my sessions. I have shared about it multiple times on Twitter as well, on LinkedIn, that I'm just in awe of this structure. That again, I can post links later in the chat box. So this defines this entire thing. The diastasis structure tells you that how do you need to structure your documentation, because documentation is not just about, now if you talk about, if you're learning JavaScript, because currently doing that, so if you want to write documentation about JavaScript and you need to tell the user how do you want your application or your project to be used using JavaScript, right? So there are different things that you have. So you have tutorials first of all, and tutorials actually tell you step by step thing for a beginner, like do this, click this, now go this, now navigate to this. So these are tutorials which you can apply as it is written in the documentation, and when you apply this, you get the desired result. So those are what we call tutorials. So this is a very straightforward approach where you just tell the user, just do this, and you'll get the desired outcome. The second part is the explanation or how to guides. So these are two separate things, but this is exactly what the explanation part comes into picture, where you write the comprehensive picture of your documentation. So suppose, again, the same example, if I am learning JavaScript, now I know how to set it up and I know how you're building the project. But now I want to know the nuances of the different types of variables, what is var, what is let. I want to know where to use it, what are global variables, what are local variables. So all these things are combined into what we call the explanation part of the documentation, where you explain each and everything to the user. And the third part comes as how to's. And how to's is actually the most interesting part, because a user would love to have how to's, that how do you do this? How to actually implement this? And so, as the name is self explanatory, so that's what you do with how to's. So, that is how you actually structure your documentation. The fourth part is references. That's the easiest part of the documentation. So, I explained it in a very like minute, principled manner, but I'm going to share that link as well with you folks over here. And I think this is the most important part where I talk about structure. And the second part, as I've told, is the language and grammar part. So when we talk about language and grammar, I think there is this example I want to give. So I think 2 years back, Google was searching for text writers, and some of my colleagues had applied for it. I think Google is always looking for tech writers. So there was this question in the interview, which was, just write an article on how to play tic tac toe. Now, no one who has applied for Google would actually imagine, why would anyone want to know, like such a big company wants to know how to play tic tac toe. And that's so simple, right? And that's the exact beauty of tech writing, that you have to actually explain the complex part of it simply, and also the simple parts of it. Because, you feel that tic tac toe is so easy, but it's not the similar with the people who might have never actually heard of tic tac toe. So this was such a beautiful question where I think I struggled writing it, because I didn't know how to explain it to someone, that how to play such a simple game like tic tac toe, right? So tech writers are often put into this pedestal where you have to explain difficult subjects and the easiest subjects. So I think that's when language and grammar come into picture, because you can explain those things to a kid who is 9 years old and an old person who's like 70, 80 years old, and both of them could understand how to play tic tac toe, right? So this is the beauty of tech writers, which I say is the most important. And when we are talking about this, I think the next part is open source contributions. And I think we would have a lot of questions around open source as well, I know. So I'll just brief you the introduction where I started with open source. And because I don't want to go into the details, it's a session in itself. That's what I say. Like open source is a session in itself. So I remember I had no idea about open source. I think if you don't go to Twitter nowadays, and the people who are not on Twitter, I think they are still unaware of what is open source, because I think what everyone talks about is just on social media about open source. So outside this world, I've never seen people talking about open source. So similar was the case with me. I had no idea about open source, and I was not on Twitter as well. So there was this competition called Google Season of Talks in 2020, and somehow I just stumbled upon the competition, and I still thank my gods that I did, because I had no clue what would I have done without it. And when I stumbled upon it, the deadline to submit your own profile as a tech writer had ended. So I was like, what should I do? What should I do? And then I just scoured through the profiles, the organizations that had been listed on as the competition. And I found that there was this project called the Good Talks project, and I felt that the description of the project seemed really interesting. And I thought, why not just reach out to them and say that, I don't want to participate, but I just want to work with you voluntarily, just learn things, learn about open source, how the process is done. So I did that. They had a Slack channel. I did reach out to them and I just started chatting with them. So they actually took me in and they said that just observe first and start contributing and just learn about Git and GitHub. How does these tools work? And I was like, okay, that's a new thing to me. So I just went to YouTube, learned what is GitHub, how do you actually manage projects, and then I started working with them as a volunteer. I think it was just 2 or 3 months in with them. I think I started working with another project inside that, which was the glossary project. And that was my main thing because I got into such a big field of scientists. And those scientists were actually building glossaries for their own projects. And this was such an exciting time because otherwise, this is the power of open source, which I keep telling people that if you are just working with your own company, you'll never get to know people outside your industry. And open source does that to you. It connects you with people from outside your industry. I would have never thought in my wildest of dreams that I could actually connect with scientists globally who are working out of Japan, somewhere out of Africa, somewhere out of the US, and all of them. So in a meeting also, when we used to all come together, all were so aged and they used to talk to in different they all had different accents of English, and it was difficult at times to understand, but this was the beauty of open source, that I got connected with them, and we were actually building glossaries for them. So this is how the journey started, and the last year when I applied for one of the projects, I got into that project. So this is what I say, that not a lot of people talk about this open source thing, that you actually get connected to people outside your industry. So I think I've been blabbering a lot. You might get tired of me because I can just go on and on. But let's just bring on the questions and whatever you have to ask Sonal as well, and the people who are in the audience would love to answer.
Yeah, definitely. It was just very sweet to hear what you have beautifully have explained how you have gone into open source and GSOT program and rest of the things. So we have a lot more questions, but would you mind talking about the SDLC or DDLC, the software development life cycles or document development life
So
cycle?
frankly speaking, I never go through the SDLC cycle. So we used to learn this while we were learning coding back in those days when we were learning Java. So you have to go through the software development life cycle, and this is something that applies to documentation as well. I've seen that, but somehow I feel that when I came out of the industry and started working with open source as well and with the organizations, I realized this is not that important as we might think. So again, I can just raise some questions over here. People will start blinking their eyelids that what is she talking about? But when you start working with industry and with a lot of people and organizations, you realize that these terms simultaneously subside, because the main thing that comes, as I said, the three things that come is the structure, content, and the language part of it. So I just don't believe in SDLC and DDLC life cycles, but yeah.
Yeah, so we can go on to the tools which people can use and start their technical writing.
Tools, yeah.
Yeah.
So, as I said, the tools differ a lot with the requirements that we want to play, but there are a lot of tools. So, as I said, I used this data and XML, but it's not very user friendly. But if you are working with an organization that has a lot of documentation, so that's when these organizations use these tools. Otherwise, there is this tool called Docusaurus, and I think this is by far the most favorite tool, my current most favorite tool, which is Docusaurus. I'll paste the link on in the chat box as well, because even if you're working as an individual, if you're working as an organization, or if you're working for a startup, for an open source, anything, just use this tool because this creates amazing documentation, and for this you need to know Markdown. And again, I don't want to go into the details, but Markdown is something that whenever we are working with documentation, we should know about Markdown. So That's it. And for APIs, I use Spotlight. Spotlight is a very great tool for creating API documentation, even Postman. So, when you're working with APIs inside Postman, you're running those API calls, you can also create documentation using Postman. And then you have Gitbooks. Gitbooks is another amazing tool where you can create documentation, and there you need to know nothing about the tool. So it's just that you write your content and it gets published, so which is fairly easy for beginner tech writers because you don't need uh, any other thing. So that is what is again an amazing tool, that is Gitbooks. And apart from that, we have this WordPress, but I think WordPress, I've worked with WordPress, I've created documentation on WordPress, but it was not very user friendly, so I will not recommend that. And yeah, I think these are the tools that we use for creating documentation. And I think Sonal is out of the picture. So if you have any questions in the chat box, I would love to take that up. Uh, uh, uh. Sonal is not able to join, I guess. Glitches are a part of this virtual sessions. Yeah. Makul is asking, can you please give me the link? Yeah, definitely. I'll give you the link. This is the link. So Sonal is
Yeah.
back.
Yeah, facing some issue. So yeah, so people are asking some questions. So first one is, how can I improve my technical writing abilities?
How can you improve your tech writing abilities? So there is one thing. So I've talked about structure and language and thing, but I think this one resource will help you a lot. Again, I'm pasting links. Uh, because I think your language needs to be extremely simplified. And when you're so all major organizations, if you talk about Google, if you talk about Microsoft, you talk about even Tesla, if you talk about NASA, all these organizations are actually looking for tech writers. But the bar is so high because you need to be extremely well versed with the way you explain things. And even the best of writers cannot be the best of tech writers because technical writing in itself requires very to the point writing skills. And when you talk about how to improve tech writing abilities, I say start writing to the point things. Like be concise, be very to the point, and at points when you need to be comprehensive that each sentence makes sense. So with tech writing, what happens, people are actually not skimming through the content, they're actually reading line by line, because even if they miss one line, they know that they can mess it up, so they learn and read through that article. So this is one of the resources I would suggest people to go through if you really want to improve your tech writing abilities. And the other is Google's tech writing course. I'm being biased over here a little bit, but this is the best tech writing course I think that's available for all the beginners, intermediates, anyone. This is like the best tech writing course. It is made up of, I think, two courses, one and two. So you can just go through these two resources, and I'm pretty sure that if you start writing after learning these two resources, you're going to be an excellent tech writer.
So yeah, take these resources and you would be pro.
Yeah, and keep writing, please keep writing.
Yeah, practice is really essential for writing. I've also tried
Exactly.
it. So yeah. So yeah, similar question we have: how to write better and more concisely.
Yeah, so like this is a very difficult question, how to write concisely. But the again, when you're writing, suppose you've written a section of a piece of your writer, start questioning each sentence, that is this necessary, is this making sense, will people actually want to know this? And when you start questioning each and every sentence, you'll realize that you cut off a lot of content that does not make sense. So sometimes what happens when we were in college, right? We used to write assignments. Some of you might be in college also. I'm just sorry. I'm just too old. So when you're writing those assignments also, no, when you were told and you just keep on repeating on lines in different, just moving words here and there and just writing to make it lengthier. So that's what we used to do in assignments. Now you think that you have to remove that stuff and just write very precisely, very concisely. And uh, you know, one of the out of the box tip I would give is start writing on Twitter. Now, I'm not saying this for your own social media thing, nothing like that. It will just help you to write in concisely in those few words that you get. And when you start doing that, you realize I've realized this because I've started being active on Twitter, I think 3 or 4 months back itself. And I've realized I I want to say so much, but I just have those that word limit, and I don't know how to express myself in that word limit. So I just start writing concisely, and again the thing is, start. mm there is one more resource. I can actually give you that resource. I have just so many resources because that resource is one thing that will make that can help you to replace the words which we often use which do not make sense. Like there is this okay, let me give you the resource because I'm forgetting the examples and it will make more sense if I share that. So
Twitter
yeah.
thing is really great. I can also relate with that. I have to write so much. There is so much difference in
Yeah,
LinkedIn writing and Twitter writing. So yeah, this
exactly.
trajectory
So,
really changes. And people are also used to writing on LinkedIn, so they are not aware of how much you can
exactly.
precisely you can write.
Even I
So yeah.
suffered a lot while thinking that how should you do that? And yeah, but so if you start writing this, so this is the resource. Um, yeah, so these were the examples actually, which I wanted to share that we know when you write the sentences due to the fact that, which is a big phrase which has almost 5 words, which you can easily replace it with just because. So, when you're trying to say something due to the fact that this happened, just say because this happened. That's it. And totally lacked the ability to. So, there are again 5 words. You can just say could not or couldn't. That's one word. So, these are some amazing things that you can actually replace in your writing and become extremely well versed with your own write ups. So I think this is going to help a lot of people here when we
Yeah,
are talking about
definitely.
writing concisely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Next question, we have tips for freelance and writer.
Tips for freelance writer. Okay. Um, what I would suggest is that if you want freelance projects, you should have a portfolio. And by portfolio, I do not mean big projects, big articles, nothing like that. Just pick two things that you like. Just two things. Nothing fancy. Just two things that you think you like and make sense because if you are actually venturing into tech writing field, you know that you have to write about tech stuff, right? So it's important that you start writing first by yourself. And this will be actually a good exercise for you to also know that if you're interested in this field, because I've seen writers actually jumping out of this field because it becomes too mundane for a lot of people. So just take those two topics and start writing about it. Post it on Medium, post it on Hashnode, post it on dev.io, and they need not necessarily be something tech related. What do I mean by tech related is not something that should include coding or should include creating a project. Nothing like that. Maybe you can simply write something that how is the life of a developer. So just to showcase how well do you write and that you're writing something related to the tech field. So once you pick those two topics, write about it on the public profile and then start sharing on social media. And for that, I always recommend obviously LinkedIn and Twitter because my journey started with LinkedIn. So when you start writing about your work and your own things on LinkedIn, people actually approach you. So this is the first tip. The second tip is start networking, and by networking I mean the people who are already in the industry. So tech writers who are already in the industry, start connecting with them, start asking questions to them, and also there are a few tech writers. Suppose, like, let's just take an example of me. So now if I don't have time, okay, but I do receive a lot of tech writing projects. So what I can do is, if you are connected with me, if you have shown your work to me and I know that you're a good tech writer, so I can actually pass on those projects to you. So which is a very good technique of networking. So this is a very good effect which you'll have post networking. So do these two things, and I would not suggest going to any platform like Upwork, because they are not going to help you. They are going to just take a lot of your time. So just believe in the power of social media, and also the power of networking. So to talk to a lot of people, that's going to help you. You can't even imagine the after effects of what networking does. So just go for it.
Yeah, that's really true. I've also seen the effect of it, and people just talk more about it. So yeah.
Exactly, yeah.
So next question we have is regarding the information architecture. So can you just brief more about the information architecture?
Okay,
Any sort of.
this is a very generalized question, because I think information architecture is an important part of text writing, but it is so comprehensive, it is so complicated, and it's again so important. So, uh, I have a lot. So, I'll give you an example for information architecture. So, for people who do not know what an information architecture is, if you're building a website from scratch, right? So when you're building a website from scratch, you have to define where do you want the tabs to go. There, this is where my home tab should be. This is where my about us section would be. This is where my contact us section would be. And then you define what comes inside home, what comes inside blogs, what comes inside contact us. So when you create those that hierarchy, that's when you realize that this is exactly how my website should look like. So you need to have that design structure in your mind. This is the simplest way where you can define the information architecture. Now, connecting this with tech writing, I would say that there was this GSOD project which I was involved with last year, which was Metanoma project. And for so they already had documentation, but to revamp the documentation, to polish that documentation, it was important for us to actually first analyze the existing content and then create an information architecture. What does that mean? That analyze the pain points in the existing documentation. What are the gaps? What is the quality of documentation? How hard it is to read and understand it? And when you note those points down, that's when you start creating the information architecture from scratch. Now what would it look like? And again, I have a resource for this which I can share, because I think information architecture, every tech writer should know how to create an information architecture. It's important, and it's easily ignored also. So that is the simplest form where in which I can explain what an IA is. But I'll give you a resource. I think that would help you.
Definitely, that's great. And it is the next is not a question, but people is appreciating you that they have zero expectation and they have simply came here to hear from you. So that's really a great thing.
Oh God, zero expectations. Thanks.
So next question we have is insights into how technical documentation is done.
Insights into how technical documentation is done. I mean, again, it's a very generalized question, because I think like until now, what I have been talking is about documentation, but there is no one insight. Again, just like someone asked, what is an information architecture? I think that's a part of documentation. Someone asked, how can you write concisely? That's a part of documentation. Someone asked, how do you research? So that's a point of documentation. So all these combined, small little things combined, make a good documentation. So I really don't know what are the insights I can give, but it's just these little things. Yeah.
Yeah. Nextly, we have question that what's the approach that you take while writing a feature?
While writing a feature, so do you mean a product feature? I think you mean product feature. So
Yeah.
I'm just assuming that, could you? Okay. Okay, thanks. So there is this one thing when you're working with a company and you want to, because I think mostly when you're working with a company, that's when you realize that you need to write about a product feature. And the best part of writing about a product feature is running it yourself. So until and unless you run that feature, until and unless you see how that feature works, you are never going to be able to write about it nicely. So because I've seen this, people don't take tech writers seriously in an organization, which I have realized it. So they don't take it seriously, even with opportunities monetarily or work wise also. They hire a tech writer, but they never take them seriously. So now it's a battle in itself, which you have to clear, right? So, you know, you are in the product team, but you're never taken into product meetings. So you have to fight that battle, and you have to make sure that ask your seniors that if you want me to write for this feature, you have to take me into the meetings where this feature is being built. So because if you don't take me, I will never know how this feature was built. So someone can keep talking about it, that this is the feature, this is how it runs, and this is how you are going to write it. But that's not how the best of documentation comes out. That's not how the best of write-ups about a feature comes out. So you need to know how it runs. And this actually works. Kushbu, that's a very good question, by the way, because this also works with the open source organizations. When you have an open source project, now there you have no one to explain it to you, that how will this feature work. But what you will have is just set up a meeting with someone. If you are writing the documentation about them, just set up a meeting with one of them, and make sure that you know the entire journey of the product and that how those features were built. And the second thing is running it on your local machine, because with open source projects, this is one of the most difficult parts. That and the most interesting part also, because when you start running it on your local machine, you will start realizing the gaps that have not been notified until now. So do these two things. If you're working in an organization or if you're working with an open source project, these two things are going to help you. So please talk to developers, because developers are the heroes who have built this. And I think that's how the best of the tech writing piece can come out. Very good question, but Khushbu, nice.
Definitely. So next question is that the most common question, that tips on how to get starting in technical writing.
Oh, again, I've been talking about this. So again, I'll repeat those 2 pointers. Start writing and start networking. There is nothing in this world that can stop you if you do these two things. uh, when we joined, or when I started as a tech writer, I had no playbook. I didn't know how to do this. So the best part about this is that you get to experiment a lot. So I got to experiment so much. Obviously, it took a lot of time. You waste a lot of time in these things when you experiment things by yourself, but you learn also a lot. And I like this part that uh, I don't want to give you a playbook from step to step that this is how you should become a tech writer. But I will just give you these two general tips: that start writing on platforms and start sharing your work. And the second part is networking. So nowadays, I think the last year of pandemic encouraged developers also who are writing so much, and these platforms called Hashnode and dev.io have exploded. I mean, I have seen so much content, like people are actually writing. And that, as a third person, because I have been in this field for what, 4 5 years, and that as a person made me feel like, so happy that people are actually exploring text writing, people are actually exploring blog writing. So there is no worries for you to start as a tech writer. Just start writing blogs on these platforms and share it on the social media platforms. And also, when you share it on social media platforms, it's good to have a following first, because then people, and by following, I don't mean you need to have thousands of followers. By following, I mean, when you start, this is when the second part comes into picture, the networking part. So when you start talking to people now, and when you share that work with them, I have written this, can you just review it? People are actually connected with you. And you will not believe, there is this tech writing space I had a few days back, which was with Bonnie. And he himself is a good tech writer, and he has almost what, 15,000 followers on Twitter. But while I think recently he's also building his ebook on tech writing, and that's when he was asking me small things like, Ankita, is this cover page good? Ankita, these are the topics that I'm going to include. Do you think these are enough? Do you think I need to add more? Now, this is what networking does. So if you're talking to me or anyone in the industry, you are also entitled to ask me questions then, and that's how people improve, taking feedback in public or talking to people. So I think these two things, I'm talking a lot, but these two things help a lot.
I think those were great points. Nextly, we have question is that when okay, what are some good resources to research when tech writing? So again, they are asking good resources to start.
Yeah. So see, I've shared a lot of resources, but to research, I think this depends a lot on the topic that you're writing about, because research will vary in those aspects. Like people say, good research things, good research resources are Google. Now, obviously, Google search is a good resource, but then you are not always falling into the good packets. I always there was again this Twitter thread when someone asked who here goes to the second page of Google search, and I said almost always, and people were actually commenting, "Are you normal?" So this, when you become a writer or when you want to research something, I think it's very good to just go to the second, third pages of search, because sometimes good resources just fall behind because of not good SEO. And I don't think so. As tech writers, we should be very worried about SEO, right? So that's why I always appreciate the work that is just falling behind because of lack of SEO tags. So go to those second, third pages when you're researching something. Second is always have those handy resources. Like you can always get good, uh, I say that good tech write-ups also have a lot of data in it. And when you're searching for data, just go to there are so many, what do we call those, so many good reports. So there are developer community reports by Stack Overflow or by any of the developer tools. You can actually refer to those reports and get your data. So because good writers always have data, this I've realized. So mention those data points. And apart from that, I think that's what has helped me. If you're writing about these things, just go to that. And if you're writing about API, suppose I'll just take this example. So you can go to websites like Nordic APIs. Nordic APIs has amazing API content, so you can always refer to their blogs also. And then there is this again, I can share that link. There is this website which actually gives awards to tech writing sites, and which was very amazing because they have dissected each tech writing product and documentation, and they have given awards to them, that this was the best product, this was the best documentation. And I learned so much. I never knew that Mercedes Benz had a documentation. I only got to know from them, and that too, such an amazing documentation they have. So always keep searching for these things where you'll find that will not be related to your own topic, but that will be related to in general. So that would help you. Yeah.
I think that was really great points. I also don't know that Mercedes had documentation. It was quite
Exactly.
awkward to hear that also. So yeah. So now the contrary question that why one should choose this field? What are the advantages and why one should
Yeah,
go for
that's
it?
a difficult question because I didn't choose this field. It just happened to me. But I think the dearth of tech writers in India, especially, I think that's what caught to me. Um, that why do we have such less number of tech writers, especially in India? So I'm part of this community, which I think anyone who is interested in tech writing should also be a part of, which is called Write the Docs. So anyone who's interested, please join that community on Slack. You get so much knowledge from that one community. It's amazing. It's amazing. It's amazing. So just go to their website and just join their Slack channel. So what I've realized it's a global channel, and when you see Indian tech writers, they are just handful, and I don't even know if we are handful there. So maybe lesser than that. So when we're talking about tech writing industry in general, I think the advantages are that you might be one of those firsts because we are not seeing a lot of tech writers. Yeah, that's the link. Thank you, Nuha. So you don't see a lot of tech writers in India. The second part is there, the advantages, there are just so many opportunities. I can't even stop talking about the opportunities, because if you open LinkedIn and you just type tech writing, tech writer, technical writer, sorry, and you see so many organizations are hiring tech writers, but none of them are getting tech writers. And if I take an example of my own company, like if I talk about Google, they have been looking for tech writers in the cloud domain for almost, I think, 1.5 years now, and they are still not able to find it. So just this also helps, this one point also helps when you're looking for opportunities, right? You also find that where are these bigger organizations looking for in tech writing. So now, just as I gave an example that Google is looking for technical writers in the cloud domain. Now, if I learn some things around cloud, or if I write one or two articles around cloud, there are chances that I can crack that field. So always look for those opportunities, because you'll also get to know that where you should venture into. And so these are the advantages, right? The disadvantages are many. And I think I have talked about this in one of the, also Ride the Dogs Australia happened in 2019, I guess, where I was called as a speaker. And I talked there about how what are the disadvantages of technical writing. And one of those disadvantages that you work as a lone writer. And by lone writer, I meant was that in such a big organizations, as I've previously said, that people don't take tech writers seriously. So that is the biggest disadvantage, that you have to crack your notch through it. You have to actually talk to people. You have to actually make your own stance that, I am important. Even though I'm in the product team, I'm not considered important. And that's why they don't hire more than one tech writer. That's again one of the disadvantages, because working as a singular tech writer takes so much toll on your mental health, and also so much on your quality of the work that you're delivering. So I think that's one of the biggest disadvantages. And if you're working as a freelancer, I don't think so then there are any disadvantages. Plus, if you can crack international markets, I think tech writers are paid the highest out of all the writing domains that we have: content writing, copywriting, SaaS based writing, anything. Tech writers are paid the highest. So if you crack that international market, you can be paid in huge dollars. So this is one of the biggest advantages, because it requires a lot of research. So that's what I would say.
Yeah, those were amazing points, and yeah, people can understand that why they must choose. Also, I would like to ask that is it is a quite a less explored field, so they must consider that also, that they have less competition here than development. So yeah.
Exactly. And it, because it also requires, now people think that tech writing is fairly easy. It is not. So you need to know things about coding. You need to know things about, as she said, SDLC and everything. You need to know stuff about that. And if you are actually coding something, if you're actually building projects, it's like a bonus point, because when you're writing things, you should know something around the back end part of it. So it's very important, and it actually is a good field. You're actually, I think in the US you are paid as much as the software engineers are paid as a tech writer. So there is again this tech writer report which you can find in the Write the Docs website as well. So just go through it. You'll find so many gaps we have as an India market. Yeah.
So nextly, I would like to ask that is there any principles or style guides which we need to follow while doing writing or technical writing?
There are multiple style guides. We have this Microsoft style guide, we have this Chicago style guide, we have Google's own style guide. I really like Google's style guide. Again, I'm being biased, but the good things about it is very user friendly. So when you are following those style guides, you don't need to go anywhere else. And also Chicago Manual Style Guide, I think that's the name. It's amazing. It's amazing. It's just amazing. So I think when you're writing and you're venturing into technical writing, these two style guides would really help you. And the other thing is, start creating your own style guides when you're writing for a product or for a company. Simultaneously start creating your own style guide, because there are things that will only matter to you. And for example, I'll just take an example that there was this company I was working with. It was a startup, and there was this small thing in the entire documentation that they had. E-commerce was written in 5 different ways. So there was small e and capital C. There was e, and then there was a hyphen. Then there was capital E hyphen capital C, and there were like 5 different ways I could find e-commerce. The word e-commerce was written in. And these are very small, minute things, but you have to actually take care of this. So create your own style guide and mention these things, that how do you want to mention e-commerce, in your product style guide. So that would help you. And yeah, this is what I refer to.
So someone is asking that the API site you mentioned and one more site is the reference which you mentioned for
Oh yeah.
API
So
stocks.
the API side which I mentioned is called the Nordic APIs. And the website which I'm talking about, the 1 minute, I'll just search my
Yeah.
and I'll uh, give that link. And also, if you want to just look for good documentation, please have a look of Stripe's documentation. I'm a huge fan of their documentation, and if anyone wants to learn how to write concisely, how to be a good tech writer, just go through Stripe's documentation, and you're going to love that. And that resource, I have so many resources. 1 minute. I have to search for it. Sorry.
Also, someone is asking that along with Hashnode and Medium, you mentioned some third site
Oh
as
yeah,
well.
it is called
Was that
dev.to.
to? Yeah,
And the beauty of these platforms is you realize it. I mean, I want you to explore also, but I'll just tell you that dev.to is very North America centric. So if you want something to be discovered in the international markets, right? And if you want to crack that market, start writing on dev.to. It's very North American centric. And if you just want to write your thoughts out, just start exploring Hashnode. Hashnode is pretty easy, and Medium also. But now Medium has that paywall thing that's that's acting like a blocker for a lot of people. So you can just start exploring Hashnode and dev.to.
also, I have one more question that why technical writing is so much unexplored field and as you mentioned in India,
Yeah,
as
even
everyone
I'm looking
is
for answers for that.
as everyone is just running behind SD roles and
Yeah, because I think
yeah,
it's least explored because it's not given the visibility it should get. So, even when I was studying or when I was working, even when I started working as a tech writer, I didn't know what a tech writer does. So I think the lack of visibility is the major problem. Similar example, you who would have thought that 1 minute, sorry. Like
yeah,
similar example, how are we talking about Web3, crypto, NFTs so massively just in this last 1 year?
yeah,
Do we think that blockchain didn't exist this before this? uh, when was the white papers discovered? It was like back in 2008, I guess. So it was such a long time back when we had discovered blockchain, we had discovered about crypto, but why are we only talking about it this
right
year?
now, yeah,
So it's the power of social media. That's when you start getting the visibility of these things. And this is the same thing that we have started getting with open source, and this is the same thing that is happening with tech writing now. When I was working as a tech writer, I know that I didn't even know what was a good pay for tech writers. So now I realize that I was underpaid, but back then I didn't realize it because I had no comparison label to go to, right? Because
right,
all of them were paid the same. So you need to have that, and this visibility is bringing a change. So I think
yeah,
that's the major reason.
definitely. Also,
Yeah,
if anyone has any questions, then we can
yeah,
take
and
up those.
until then I'm finding that resource.
Yeah.
But yeah, you can always connect with me on Twitter or LinkedIn. I'll be more than happy to help you if you have any more questions after this also. um, my actually Twitter DMs are always full. I forget to reply to people then. I'm sorry. Yeah. um,
Also, if you like about this session, then don't forget to tag Ankita and share about whatever you have learned and
Even
London
if you didn't
also.
like, you can write bad things about
Yeah.
me. I don't mind.
Yeah. You can mention
I've
the
been like,
feedbacks which are there. Yeah.
yeah, I've been like pro working as a tech writer, listening to bad things. So
Yep.
I'm not able to find it. But I will definitely share it if anyone
Yeah.
wants it later.
Yeah, that works, I guess. So, any last tips which you'd like to share with people?
I mean, that's it. I have been talking a lot, and thanks for bearing with me and listening to so many things I had to share. Because tech writing, when it comes to tech writing, I just start blabbering. I forget about the world, and this is something I've slowly fell in love with because I didn't used to like it when I started it, but slowly and steadily I started falling in love with the beauty it has and with the massive opportunities that it has. Because I think currently, like, we are building this product called Dev Library, and I'm not working as a tech writer here. I'm actually handling the developer relations. So the thing that got me here was also tech writing, because what companies are looking for is how well versed are you with tech writing skills and how well versed are you with the community part of it. So with Sonal, I think you can also relate to, because
Yeah.
community is something, again, the networking part which I've been like blabbering about for such a long time, is when you build this community, when you talk to so many people, people actually start recognizing you and your efforts. Otherwise you're just like a small fish in the pond which no one will realize exists. So
Yeah.
this is another suggestion I would give, that be a part of community also, any community that you would like.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. And I'm still searching for the resource.
Yes, no worries. We can share it later also.
Yeah, you can just reach out to me, I'll share.
Yeah. If you have any questions, then we are waiting for a while.
Yes,
Otherwise, we
yes,
can wrap up
definitely.
this session. Next question is step two, get into open source community.
Yeah, as I told, uh, 1 minute. I'm just a bit distracted because I was searching for the resource. Sorry. So, I that's a good question, because this question is a never-ending question. I think in all the Twitter spaces also, where we talk so much about all these things, people always ask that how do we start with this? And I always say explore, and people don't understand what you mean by explore. So let's just take this example. If I wouldn't have stumbled upon this GSOD thing, I would not have ever known about open source, or maybe later, not just 2 years back. So start exploring these options, start exploring such competitions which exist. There is this competition called Outreachy, there is GSOD is going to happen again. So, the thing is, there are open source organizations, quality open source organizations, that are participating in it. So you get to know which organization relates with your own work, because you can't reach out to everyone. There are some technologies that you work with. So you can actually reach out to the organizations that are using that technologies, or something that is interesting, that looks interesting to you. So you can reach out to them. And the second part is, that's again a plugin of my own product, which is Dev Library. So you can actually go to that site and look for those open source. Those are all quality open source projects, again, because when someone submits their work on our website, not all the projects go on the site. So we have people, internal Google experts, who actually take out time and only get the quality content out there. So just go through the projects related to your technology if you're working with Google technologies. So you can go through those projects and just go click that project and look at the issues. And recently, I'll also tell you, I've been a part of this open source project called Super Tokens, which is a user authentication tool they have built. It's an open source project. Now, what I did was, I just went to the issues list where people have mentioned the issues that they have been facing with the product. Now, if you think that you are someone who can help with that issue, just tag yourself in that issue. And it could be technical, it could be even technical writing related. There are so many open source organizations, good projects, but they don't have a readme, they don't have a documentation. So you can actually go and say that, what, I want to just write documentation for your open source project. What, I saw this issue, I want to assign it to myself, and I'm suggesting this change. I have seen this and I have also done this, and this is what you can do this. So, because this is how you start exploring projects. And the third part is, there is this amazing person on whom I got to know about via Twitter, which is Eddie. He runs an amazing community called Eddie Hub on Discord. You can actually join that channel, and he also has so many open source communities, open source projects where you can contribute to. And again, I can give you one more resource where you can contribute. So that's it. Yeah. I mean, there are so many open source projects who are looking for volunteers. Just start that.
Yeah, yes, those were really insightful points that you covered regarding open source and that it is non-ending thing that you can ask for from
Exactly. This
anyone.
is
So
a
yeah.
non-ending question. Yeah.
So if anyone has any questions, just feel free to ask. Otherwise, you can wrap the session. I
Jagriti,
don't.
I can actually share the link separately because I have to scour through a lot of links. I'm sorry for that.
Yeah, I guess it works with Agruti. So yeah,
Awesome.
I think we can wrap up the session now. Yeah,
Sure.
it was great listening to you and regarding the technical writing. I've not explored it yet, and I'm just looking forward to explore it. Yes.
Definitely you should. Yeah. I'm
Yeah.
looking forward to you exploring it.
Yeah. And I think
Yeah.
exploring is such a good part that you must do. And I've just
Exactly. People keep asking me that, how much should I charge for this freelance project? I say, please explore. You might charge lesser than what you had expected one time, but then the next
yeah,
time you'll know that what should you charge the next time. So it's
yeah,
always about exploration. No one can tell you how much to charge. That's
yeah,
that's really difficult.
definitely. So we can have a screenshot and then we can wrap up the session.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. Also, don't forget to tag Ankita and mention that how good session she has taken. So
Or
yeah,
even bad, as I told.
yeah. Not really. They would be post that thing. So yeah. Okay, I've taken the screenshot. I
Thank
guess
you.
if anyone has any
I'm
questions,
looking very tired too.
yeah.
I had a meeting today and they
Yeah.
also took a screenshot and I was like, what am I looking like? I'm seriously so tired.
Okay.
But okay. Thank you so much for who
Okay.
joined and who listened to the blabbering I had.
Yeah.
Thank you
Thank you
so
so
much.
much, everyone,
Thank
for
you,
joining in,
Sonal.
and thank you so much, Ankita,
Thank you,
for
Sonal.
the great session you have taken. Yeah.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye. See you soon.